So welcome tonight. This is wonderful. Wonderful to have all you here as we celebrate the big, ugly hullabaloo and Eric Drummond Smith. This lecture tonight is a collaborative effort between the museum and the Arts Alliance of the Mountain Empire, AAME, and also Emory and Henry College. To that end, I would like to ask Charles Goolsby, Professor Goolsby, to say a couple of words about Emory and Henry, please.
I'm hoping this turns up yes, because I'm taller. Okay. So I'll start by saying that about 4 years ago, Betsy White and I were meeting in a restaurant that no longer exists. And we were talking about a partnership between Emory and Henry College and the William King Museum of Art. And we have been able to make that come together. So our students do internships here. They do shadowing of artists. They get to meet with the artists in the art lab. They get to be here tonight. They get to meet the artists. They get to make professional connections. And we think this is a unique relationship. There's another unique relationship going on tonight that's kind of neat, and that is Eric Smith was in my very first Art 111 class at Emory and Henry College when I arrived in 1994. That gives away two things, my age and his age. We're very, very, very proud of Eric because I think Eric has made more art, even though he went on to become a political science professor at UVA-Wise. He's made more art than probably all of my other art graduates put together. And it's pretty impressive, and I think you can see that outpouring of stream of consciousness in his show. But I wanted to mention the partnership and how proud we are to be affiliated with a wonderful accredited museum. They are AAME accredited, that's William King. Of course, we're accredited as well. It is unique. It is a great coming together of a liberal arts college and also a wonderful museum, which is so distinctive and unique in this country and is just going forward in all kinds of ways. And Betsy, that was very impromptu. Did that do the trick? All right, thank you.
I didn't even tell him to say all that. So our other partner is AAME Magazine, and we're always delighted to work with them. This is the second time we've done a lecture together, and I hope it, of course, will not be the last time. Martin Dotterich is our main link to that, putting on the speaker series, and we have Erica Barker here tonight from AAME to say a couple of words about that for you.
Thank you. First, I'll just say thank you all for coming out tonight. My name is Erica Barker. I'm the president of Arts Alliance Mountain Empire. And our organization is a small nonprofit, and our goal is to advocate, nurture, and celebrate the arts in the region. We do that in a couple of different ways, one of which is our speaker series. And thank you to William for hosting us tonight. And also, we produce a monthly magazine called A Magazine, so be sure to check that out with a calendar of arts events in the region. And stories about artists in our area. And then we also have the Arts Alliance, that's the organization name, the Arts Achievement Award, which we are currently in our nomination period for. So that award goes to regional artists, arts educators, arts advocates, or arts administrators who have made a difference in this region. So if you know of anyone that you would like to nominate for that award, please check out our website, and you can submit your nominations online or by mail. But those are, March 1st is the deadline for that. So again, thank you all for coming out tonight, and I'll turn it over to Martin to say a few more words about Eric.
My name is Martin Dotterwhite. Several years ago, I was here at William King. I think William King and Arts Alliance, which I'm here on behalf of, have a similar focus, which is to bring people together, especially to bring people together around creativity, and a love of beauty, and a love of expression, and a love of place. And it's wonderful to see you all here tonight. It was at an event like this for another exhibit. I can't remember what the exhibit was, but I remember seeing Allison Mays, and Allison said, I want to introduce you to somebody. She took me over to this guy who was kind of standing at a kind of bar, surprisingly, She said, oh, he runs trivia. And so I went over and said hello, and he immediately regaled me with about 17 unusual facts about birds. I don't remember any of the individual facts, but I remember being very impressed with this sort of tapestry of avian fact that he had woven off the cuff. It was very impressive. That was the first time I got to meet Eric. It is a delight to be back here to host him. We have hosted him before during the exhibit, which was the political one.
The Cherry Bounce.
Cherry Bounce exhibit. You came and spoke at the Bristol Public Library, so it's good to be back. I am taking a moment to do an advertisement for the other thing I do. I run a speaker series in Bristol called the Buechner Institute for Faith. Well, it used to be called the Buechner Institute for Faith and Culture. Now it's King Institute for Faith and Culture. We take our name from American novelist and memoirist Frederick Buechner, who died last year at 96. And we have an annual event in his honor, and this year it's an art historian. And this guy is fantastic. So I want to encourage you to come see him. His name is Matthew Milliner. Matt he has a website that's Millinerd, he puts a D at the end.com. He has a lot of short piece reviews. His review of the Biennale from last year is terrific. He has 2 books out, and he'll be here speaking on both in the evening, though, on February 20th. In the evening at First Presbyterian Church in Bristol, he's going to do a talk called The History of Art in One Image. And if you have a chance to come here, Matt, he's dynamic, he's great, and he's worth your time. I hope you can come join us. Thank you all for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to Anna.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here tonight. My name is Anna Buchanan, and I am the curator of contemporary fine art and craft here at William King. Big Ugly Hullabaloo. How did it come about? I had the most beautiful conversation with Eric. I pretty much met Eric when I was going around to different artist studios for a video project and asking them, what does it mean to you to be a contemporary artist? And the answer that Eric gave me was so beautiful. And to hear him speak about his work like he's going to do today was so magnificent. I knew in that moment that he had to have a show here. And I knew that that show needed to look like Eric's mind, the inside of his mind. As much as we could do that. I haven't done a thing. I really haven't. I haven't done a thing except figure out which walls the works would go on. And primarily that's because which walls would fit them. But I have to read a portion of my curator's statement because I think that is the only way I can describe Eric's work. As I stare at the work of Eric Drummond Smith, I am taken to a completely different place. My mind is filled with echoes of colors, footsteps, and the song of a brushstroke that contains the marks of Eric's fingerprints. Eric has left his mark like a clue on a handle and opened up a door to a completely other picture plane. A plane that is filled with the blues and jazz and vibrant hues and freedom and sunbursts of movement. It's a place that harbors the best moments of a fever dream. Eric is influenced by so much and has mastered the art of a maestro. And as he instructs his characters to take stage, to take shape, to take time, and take up space, he does so in between the hollows of a sentence. As a pop surrealist neo-expressionist, Eric knows exactly what he is doing. He knows he is enticing the viewer to find an answer via the lure of a drunken cat's plaid suit. And he invites me as the viewer to take the stage with his characters as he continues to conduct his characters. He asks us to project onto these anthropomorphic creatures in an attempt to have a conversation with us. He asks us, what do you want to see in this world? My heartbeat is made metronome as it keeps time to the rhythm of Eric's lines as I rise and fall with the strokes of black ink backed by this beautiful chorus of color. At last, when I have read the punchline, finished the story, contemplated human existence, and lost myself in philosophy, Eric has simultaneously concluded this raspy, blues-infused concerto. And I step back from the work that I was looking at, and I hear Eric's words telling me that the big, ugly hullabaloo is just beginning. I move on to the next painting, and I know that as I do so, I can see Eric in my mind picking up the next paintbrush and beginning again. Without further ado, here is Dr. Eric Drummond Smith.
I don't even know why you want me to talk, man. Back there crying, all these people who matter to me saying nice things. What's going on with this? I have never done anything quite like this in my whole life, an art talk like this. So if I'm too boring, I apologize. There is alcohol downstairs. I didn't even really know when I sat down to work on this how to put it together. So I came up with this idea of episodes where I would just kind of tackle themes. So I hope this makes sense and isn't too insane. I mean, it's mine, so it will be it. First off, I wanted to talk about my sketches and my formal stuff. And I wrote a lot of stuff, so if I lose my way, just ignore me. There's a kind of dichotomy in art as far as I think of it. Let me move to a picture. Learning, like, well, you know, you'd think I don't talk for a living, but I do, I really do. There's a kind of dichotomy in art as far as I think of it, that of sketch work and formal finished work. The sketch is immediate and it's spontaneous. Even if it starts with an intention, it's a freewheeling interplay of mind and body and materials, and to me it's play. But it's productive play, and so it's kind of a process of self-instruction, which is really where play comes from, right? Like our need as mammals to learn. And humans are kind of amazing because we learn our whole lives. There are very few species that do that, but there I just went social science, I gotta be careful. So sometimes, I just realized these are out of order, I'm really smart. Sometimes I sketch as a way of learning. No, they're not, I'm right. And I want to study the work of other people, and I want to learn about their art, and learn about color composition, and design, and technical skills. I want to steal, I'm a thief. And I want to go to my art history books and my art magazines and steal. I want to learn how an artist, a different artist, maybe somebody who's been dead for thousands of years, maybe somebody who's still alive, how they translate X into Y, like that process of the mental into the present. So these are, I've got some of my sketches here. These are very recent sketches. So these are Audubon, I stole from him. This is, what's his name, who found Troy, his wife, and the jewelry that she wore that outraged everybody in the whole world. And then just, you know, different artwork. Like I'm always studying patterns, I'm always studying just to steal from people. I have a whole notebook that I found the other day that I did in 1997 that was just women, other artists, women. And I was, because I decided I was a senior in college, I'm like, I'm bad at drawing women. And I need to be good at drawing women. So I did nothing but a whole sketch pad of looking at other people's art and drawing to learn how people composed and designed after that. And I do a lot of that. So that's one of the things I do. So that's how I'm a great thief. Sometimes I sketch. Bye guys. I am more nervous talking than I've been in years. Other times I sketch as reflection. sometimes I'm reflecting on what I've been thinking. And you know, I'm a political scientist, I'm a political philosopher. I love reading natural science, I love literature. And so whatever I've been reading, sometimes I have to get it out. I have to, or thinking about it, teaching about, I have to get it out. If I don't get it out, it'll choke me, kind of. And sometimes it's about my internal emotional state. A lot of the time, that's what it is. Like I'm feeling so much, and I'm really bad at expressing it, except when I pick up a pen or a paintbrush, and that helps. And then sometimes it's reacting to music, and I've talked a lot about that in the past. I won't labor it, but you know, I come from a family of singers and musicians, and I never had that gift or that talent, and so I just kind of am constantly in this process of trying to process music, and that has a huge impact on me because I love to be around music. I love to listen and interpret it and live in it, but I'm not a musician, so I've got to deal with that some way, and it's for art for me. And I didn't really say this, I actually do a surprising amount of architectural drawings. I guess that's where I'm just dealing with space and decay. I really like old, falling apart things. That makes me happy. I'm weird. I'm a weirdo. There's some other more weird stuff. There you go. Hot dog. I do a lot of these where I'm like, oh, imagine I was going to do a book cover and or a cool gravestone. I don't know what's going on. Finally, I do planning sketches. You know, this is where you do the work of, you know, to me this is weird because I'm an expressionist, right? And I'll talk about that in a second, but I want to paint immediate things, emotional things, powerful things, authentic things. But like you have to do the work, you have to do the planning. And the bigger the thing, the more complex the thing, the more you have to consciously prepare the composition and design. So like, sometimes I'm just drawing and sketching to try to solve the problem so that when I get to the actual piece, then it becomes me just playing again. And the sketches often evolve, like the sketch is a sketch. I really do literally live in the sketch, and then I just do whatever the hell I want once I start painting. So these, I actually chose these right here, and I got some on the next page. These, the four horsemen that's on the back wall, these are some of the initial sketches I did for that. Not the pig dude. The pig dude's just cool. I never painted him, I need to. But these guys right here, and then this is the Flatwoods Monster, and if you're West Virginia, you've heard of him, and probably had nightmares about him. So I sketch to do the work of the art. That's a big part of it. Like art is not just fun, it's work. And that's where I do a whole lot of it, of the actual problem solving. So that hopefully, again, once I get going, it just goes like that. So, and I describe these sketches in these categories, but I should say that they melt and they blend and all that good stuff. I almost just threw that on the ground. Now, the problem with me is I've always liked sketching more than formal work, honestly. And this is true both in terms of what I like to make and what I like to look at. And for me, sketches are pure and they're honest, and even when they're imperfect, they just have something that formal work doesn't have. And I've always felt that way. And I didn't even know I was struggling with this growing up. And then I took a class from this guy named Charles Goolsbee at Emory and Henry. And he told me that my sketches were better than my finished work. And I was like, you're right. You're right. And he basically was like, try to make the finished work the sketch. And I've spent a certain number of years that he gave away, thank you, Professor Goolsbee, trying to work on that ever since, trying to figure out how to do finished work, formal work that still felt like a sketch. And that's a huge part of resolving that tension. And the other big part of that from a mentor was, there was a professor, unfortunately passed on, that I had at UVA, where I got my master's in East Asian Studies, and his name was Gilroy, the most ornery, like, moved to China to learn Chinese during the Cultural Revolution, which if you know anything about China, you know that's insane. Most scariest man I ever knew. But he taught me Chinese calligraphy, and he painted calligraphy like an angel. And I am really bad at Chinese calligraphy, guys. But I learned so much about thinking about art and the philosophy of art and the philosophy of kind of authenticity. And he told me a story that about a boy, and this story was way too important. I don't know why it's so important to me, but about a little boy who was learning Chinese calligraphy, as all well-educated young Confucians did. And he was, every day he was getting hit by his teacher, you know, classic education. And the teacher was basically accusing him of not working hard enough. And so one day the little boy sat at home, and he got his character he was supposed to learn, and he got his paper, and he painted it perfectly over and over until he got it exactly right. And the calligraphy on the paper that was his homework looked exactly like the calligraphy of the example. And he took it back to his teacher, and his teacher beat him really, really badly. And he's like, "Why did you whoop me so bad?" And the Confucian scholar was like, "Because that's inauthentic. And the whole point is authenticity, is you coming out in a real and meaningful way." And he told me this after he realized I had been doing that with my homework. Again, I'm very bad at Chinese calligraphy. But it changed my life. It was one of those revelations. So, but all this is also, it should be said, it plays into the fact that like why I dig in so hard on certain elements of art history, like Egon Schiele and Ansel Kiefer and Basquiat and the calligraphers of China and the Islamic world. Yeah, so that's episode 1. That wasn't too painful, right? You're fine, you're not bothering me, guys. Can you see, I'm up here falling all over myself. You're a blessing. Episode 2, process. I read a bunch of little things online about what you're supposed to talk about at Art Talks. And apparently you're supposed to say how you make art. And I didn't think that me saying I sit down somewhere and turn on music and be making marks was enough. So I had to sit and really think about it. Even though that's and I'll sit anywhere, I don't care. If there's music and I have paper, which is always, I will just make art. So, these slides, all these slides are in my studio over in the art lab. Anybody who wants to ever come over, it's there. It's messy, it's the messiest one. Everybody else's looks nice. Mine looks like a tornado went through it. Anyways, so first off, when I paint formal work, I normally start with a sketch, or often, not always. And it's normally pretty minimalistic. Sometimes I make maquettes, especially with bigger works. There's some of those in there. And it's really to help me figure out like the fundamental design issues, like spacing and location of the big stuff, which again, I often ignore immediately after I figure out the design. And my most common grounds that I work on are paper, Bristol board, wood panels, and canvas. There's a lot of all that in this show, except for the wood panels, and there's a real easy reason for that. I don't know if you've heard about the pandemic. It was a whole thing, and wood got real expensive, guys. I actually love to paint on all of those for different reasons, but like wood, I really love because like I don't gesso it very well. I break all of my rules that I learned from Professor Goolsby, and I'm like, it'll fall apart an extra 200 years early. I'm okay with that. And Ansel Kiefer, you're who introduced me to Ansel Kiefer, so that's all I'm gonna say. And that's a real deep cut joke. Sorry about that. Anyways, but and Bristol board I started using actually because I read the comic book artists using. And I've always loved comic book. We'll talk about that in a second. But honestly, if it's two-dimensional, I will work on it. I'm really bad at three-dimensional so far. I've done one thing ever that I liked in 3D. No, two. I did one when I was in first grade. I forgot about that. I'm still proud of it. That's weird. I won a contest. It's okay. A lady at church really did most of it. It's true. I also almost always work when I listen to music. And so this actually, you can see, this is my studio music setup. It's very elaborate. These are used jazz and blues albums and classical music albums. And then this is the record player I have that has the one mono speaker. And it's very elaborate. It's very fancy. And then sometimes I use my Android phone. So there's a lot of reasons, but I also like to go to bars or concerts and draw. If somebody's playing music live and I'm there, I almost definitely will have a sketch pad. It's kind of how I process the music. My mom actually used to say, she would watch me at concerts she would take me to, and she would say, apparently that, look out there, Eric's sitting there watching music, because I would sit there with my eyes closed writing drawing. And not much has changed. So part of the reason why is I have sound color synesthesia. So I perceive music as color outside of my visual, words are hard, my field of vision. I wrote it down. I'm real smart. Okay, so it actually literally can, like the music I'm listening to can impact like my palette a lot. And that's actually one of the reasons why I focus on a fairly narrow set of paint colors, but I've worked really, really hard to learn how to mix, which I like to use acrylics because I like to work fast, and I like to layer, and acrylic muddies really quickly. So I spent a lot of time actually learning to mix acrylic paint to try to get the colors that I want, without muddying it. So I'm pretty proud of that actually, as weird as that may sound. But the music kind of tells me what color palette to choose in a weird sense. And I also riff off of music. I draw inspiration from it. So the shape of the lines, the forms of the lines, the shape and form of background structures, all that. They're oftentimes really instinctive, kind of automatic responses to the music I'm hearing. And then I'll sketch directly onto the work, and then I start adding layers typically. And there's this kind of interplay between, it's almost like a constant process of sketch, add layers, sketch, add layers, sketch, add layer, until I get to the point where I'm like, if I do anything else to this, there's a solid chance I'm gonna wreck it. So I'm gonna put it aside, and then like sometimes I go back to it, and about half the time when I do, I regret it horribly. But then I just start the process again, really. So when I'm working on color, I normally do that. That's normally how I do it. I also do though black and white or other like monocolor, like red and white kind of pieces. These are a few of my books. I read a lot. I'm a bit of a nerd. I know you couldn't tell from the tie with sweater look. Dork. Okay, but basically, like again, like this whole process, I really am kind of trying to integrate everything I've perceived and everything I'm thinking about, and also really think long and hard about the design and composition, while at the same time trying not to think too hard about the design and composition. It's a tension, and I wish I had a good natural resolution to it, but I never really do, but that's okay. So, and yeah, these by the way, the wonderful decorations in the thing, I ordered these to kind of get a sense of whether I like them. So, and then I'm like, oh wait, they're black, so I probably won't hang them here, so I just hung them up in my studio because that's what I do with everything I know, basically. I'm trying to think. Oh, also it should be said with my color pieces, you probably have noticed that I have a tendency to basically work in terms of layers of color, which kind of come in phases. So I explore and experiment until I kind of get burnt out on one way of applying color and forms to the background. But then I almost always go over it with flat black paint or ink. That's like the final stage. That's where it comes together. And I constantly, like literally, maybe the thing I say to myself most is, I hate this painting. This is horrible. Wait, the black paint's coming. It's gonna be fine. You're gonna do this. You got this. And then I get out my black paint, and depending on the surface, sometimes I use acrylic ink or regular ink, or I mix ink and paint to get the consistency I want for the medium I'm working with. And then I intentionally flatten it out. And I don't know why I do that, except I read too many Donald Duck comic books as a child. That's actually, I'll talk about that too. Okay, anyways, so then sometimes I do spontaneous writing. And I wanted to do this all the way back in college. I don't know, Professor Boothby might actually remember one piece I tried that really I thought was gonna be good and it didn't work, but I loved it. I still have it at home. And I worked to try to figure that out for years and years and years. And I don't think I started doing it well till like 10 or 12 years ago. And something kind of clicked, all the things I had been studying and trying to figure out started working. But now that's a huge part of my art. Not always, but a lot. And I don't know what it is. It's like a narrative or folklore or a myth that's just coming out, or it's automatic writing in the surrealist tradition, or I'm not sure. But I occasionally have a starting point or a plan, but rarely do I plan it too much. I'll definitely say that. And if you listen to the music I'm listening to when I write it, like I'll choose words and then build around them sometimes. And sometimes they have an enormous impact, like with a tree of knowledge of life and death. That piece, I have an account where I just have random music playing, and I heard Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit, and then I heard a song by Son House. I can't, for whatever reason, it's slipping my mind. But these two songs they were about these things, and for whatever reason, it was as if they like collided in my head. And I literally got in the car, I was at home, drove up here and started sketching and working. And I think I was here till 4 in the morning, and I had to teach the next day, because I'm dumb. And I like literally, over the next 6 days, I did that painting. It took forever. I don't like to work that long normally, but I just worked and worked and worked. And when I was in there, I was like 6 to 10 hours at a time. So that piece is, and the whole time I listened to those two songs over and over. It's hard to explain, I guess. It's kind of weird. I'm weird. But that's okay. I'm good at it. All right, last episode. See, it's not too bad. I was like, how damn long is this gonna be, Eric? Okay. Influences. Now, half the stuff you see online, when you Google www, what do I talk about in arttalk.net, half of them say you should absolutely talk about your influences, and half of them tell you that it's boring and no one cares. No middle ground, guys. But I think about my influences a lot, so I'm like, I'm gonna take a gamble like a wild man. So what I did is I subdivided them, and I'm gonna try to talk about them. I got pretty pictures, so that'll work, right? So the first thing I want to talk about is scientific artwork. If you know me well, you know one thing. By God, I'm a scientist, as well as every other weird thing I am, right? And I wanted to be, anybody here know what I wanted to study? And my dad convinced me not to? Dinosaurs. You're damn right, dinosaurs. Pardon my French, I'm a monster, guys. I love dinosaurs. I'm a 46-year-old grown man who could go to a dinosaur exhibit that a normal person will take 20 minutes to look at, and I can spend a whole day. And I'll think about it, and I'll debate things, and be like, I wonder what color was he? Did he have weird stuff hanging off him? I don't know. I love dinosaurs, I love paleontology, but I love science like in general. I love birds, apparently. No, I'm kidding, I totally love birds. In fact, the first thing I learned to draw well were birds. And you'll kind of see why here in a second. So I learned from and still learn from scientific art. And there are a couple artists I feel like really warrant note. One is Andreas Vesalius. Now let's talk about liberal arts and why they are going to save this world. Woo! I gotta go. Only twice have I thought about just walking out. Okay. I had a class at Emory Henry College in the glorious fall of 1994 and spring of 1995 that I learned more in that class than maybe any other class ever, and it was called Western Traditions. And it was everything. Here's a civilization, we're going to teach you 5 days a week, everything. And if you get bored, tough cookies, you're going to keep learning everything. Merry Christmas. And I had James Dawsey as my first professor of Western Traditions. And he had us do a paper on just something in the Renaissance, something that distinguished the Renaissance. And I didn't know what the heck to write about, because it's the Renaissance, right? Like somewhat important in the Renaissance. So I was like, I'm going to be a nerd. And I went and started looking up people in the Renaissance in the library, because that's where I solved the most problems in life. And I found out about this dude, Andreas Vesalius, who basically was the first guy since Galen to do really good, intense anatomical analysis. And he was also an incredible artist. And his art is creepy as sin. But golly, because here's the thing, oh look, it's an anatomy book, but he's like, no, I'm gonna pose these dead people like this. Or like this, or like, it's creepy as sin, and I loved it so much. And it was supposed to be a 10-page paper, and I think I wrote like 25 pages. I wonder why I got a PhD. Oh wait, I just figured it out. But he was 16th century Flemish, and there's a secret here that I didn't know at the time. He was teaching me about ugliness as beauty, which is kind of core to who I am. It's kind of how I survive being a political scientist. You know, I always joke when people ask me what I teach evil for a living, and I do. I teach about horror. My specializations are things like underdevelopment and violence. And it's real tough to find beauty in a world and a species that is so capable of horror. And I just keep making myself do it. And I don't know, and I swear to God, I think this dead Flemish man kind of started teaching me how to do that. It's very strange. Nobody said I was normal. Then there's racist guy, John J. Audubon. There's no getting around it. He was real racist, guys. But man, he could paint birds. And as has been well established, I like birds. This is the ivory-billed woodpecker, which is currently, hopefully we're going to de-extinct it soon. I'm really, really wanting to see one before I die. God, they were big. And when I was a little boy, my parents got a baby elephant folio of Audubon's Birds of America, which if you haven't seen it, is a book that when I was a child, I couldn't pick up. I think they got it on sale at like some estate sale or something, and I was obsessed with it. And I would sit down with my ballpoint pen, and I would sit down with my notebook paper, and I would draw over and over pieces of birds, the eyes, the eyes, the eyes, the eyes, the feet, the feet, the feet, the feet. I would study the anatomy, because birds are the most amazing things in the universe. If for no other reason than guess what birds are? Dinosaurs. Don't worry, we're not done with them. And birds, and especially Audubon's work has meant so much to me. And it is, by the way, I mean, I study non-Western politics in particular. That's my great love. And so the fact that one of my favorite artists is so violently racist is one of the most heartbreaking things I ever found out. And I didn't find out about it until like 10 years ago, like the rest of the world, when suddenly people started writing about it. And I don't know how to deal with it, but I really like his birds. And I learned from them. Oh wait, what's this? It's a dinosaur. I love dinosaurs. I don't know if I mentioned that. This is work by a paleontologist named Robert T. Bacher. He's a weirdo, and I love him. He is the guy, if you've seen Jurassic Park and all the little warm-blooded dinosaurs, he's the guy who made the argument that they were. And this book from 1986, The Dinosaur Heresies, came out, and it changed paleontology. And I found it at a bookstore, and I was 10. And again, it was a book like that big, and it was filled with beautiful dinosaur pictures. Gorgeous illustrations. He's an amazing artist. And I begged my mom, and I pleaded with my mom, and we wandered around the mall, and I kept begging, and she finally went back and bought me the damn book. And I still have it. I've looked at it so much that this cover is still taped together with Scotch tape. I'm classy. But he taught me about singing duck-billed dinosaurs and dancing stegosaurs and all these amazing, wonderful things. And I was a 10-year-old boy. Even if I didn't turn out to be someone who loved dinosaurs, I was so obsessed with them that I studied them just constantly. And it led me to so many things, to want to understand other parts of anatomy and physiology, to want to understand the dinosaur as a symbol, which then led me to start thinking about other animals and other life forms as symbols, and the role they play in our society, to understand the interplay. Like, here is a man who could have been a professional fine artist, who's like, I'm going to go every year to the American Southwest and dig in 110 degree. And that's, like that schizophrenia, that spoke to me for some reason. So that's one set. Then we have animation, illustration, and cartoon art. My YouTube recommendations look like I'm a 6-year-old little boy because I love animation and I love comics and I love illustration. And I love it all. The older the better, honestly. There's something about the guys who were just figuring it out in the early 20th century I really love. But there are a few artists I want to note. Winsor McCay and his Little Nemo in Wonderland. It's worth looking at every single one of them. Each piece is a masterpiece, and it's glorious and it's beautiful. And I will never make a turkey eating a car as good as him. And then Gertie the dinosaur. Has anybody ever seen Gertie the dinosaur? Dinosaurs. It is insane. He was a vaudeville guy as well as a comic strip artist. And he made a film, an animated film, where he would stand in front of the screen and the dinosaur would do things and he would act like he was interacting with the dinosaur. And it's worth YouTubing, I'm telling you. It's insane and it's beautiful and it's so simple. It's just simple. God bless Winsor McCay. But you know what? This guy's better. George Harriman. Crazy Cat. Have y'all seen Crazy Cat? If you haven't, for God's sake, look it up. George Harriman is the best American artist that most people haven't heard of. The thing I love the most about Harriman, I don't even know. It's like if jazz was paint and ink. And I don't know how he did it. I spent literally, I would get this book of comic strips when I was a little boy that was in the high school library. And I would get it out, and I would sit and try to figure out how the son of a suckerhead did it. And I'm an old fart now, as my 12-year-old niece told me this weekend. You're very old, Uncle Eric. Thank you. I love you too. But it's a comic strip about a cat whose gender we don't know, a cop who's trying to protect her. By the way, all three of them, Crazy Cat not married, the cop is married, who's kind of in love with Crazy Cat, and Ignatz the rat, not just married, has all these kids, but Crazy Cat's in love with him. And Ignatz, how does he respond to her love? He throws bricks at her head. This is the whole comic. And it is amazing. It's amazing. And I love it. And I want to make one thing as good as one of his good pieces. It's like Zen koans painted by Miles Davis. It's insane, dude. The 90s were cool, guys, am I right? They were. I was so much cooler then. Weezer. All right. That was good. I should just leave on that. All right. Karl Barks. Now, Karl Barks is a guy who has been beat up a lot in political science literature, especially by critical theorists and stuff. And yet, he's like, if you read his stuff, he's like, I wanted to draw Donald Duck and Uncle Scrooge and Huey, Dewey, and Louie. It wasn't part of an imperialist agenda. And I believe him. Karl Barks comics, I grew up, I knew every place in the greater Bluefield metro area to get reprints of Karl Barks comics. And I would save all my money to buy them. And I have a huge collection in a big box of Uncle Scrooge and Donald Duck comics. And I can't draw Donald Duck to this day. Every few months I'm like, I want to give it a whirl again. And every time I'm like, God, I'm a horrible artist. Oh, Karl Barks, you bastard. He was amazing. And his art was so vibrant and beautiful and fantastic. And I was lucky enough to be a kid, be 9 through 14 when there was this huge reissue of all his comics. And I love his work. But I love Mary Blair. I probably should have included her. So you've seen A Small World at Disneyland and Disney World and all that. Mary Blair, that's all her art. Incredible artist. She did all the backgrounds for all the great Disney shows, or all the sketches. She basically did all the sketches for Snow White and Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty, all those wonderful ones. But nobody knows who she was. But she's one of the great artists of the 20th century. Look her up, she's rad. And then there's this guy. When I was a kid, I used to cut comic strips out and glue them into a notebook. And I would keep the notebook at my cabin because I would get bored and I didn't have comic books there. And this is Tony Millionaire's Monkeys. It inspired an animated show called Drinky Crow, about a drunk crow, in case you're curious. And it's amazing. It looks like it's a Seagar comic, right? From the 20s or 30s. But it is insane. It's like if Sartre wrote, or Simone de Beauvoir wrote Seagar Popeye comics. It's insane, and it's so beautiful. And I love him too because I've written him a number of times, and he's so charming and wonderful and always writes back. And but I found it literally in, those zines that you could find around malls and bars. I would always pick those up so I could cut out comics. And I found Monkeys in some, and that's how I found him. This was way more, if my parents knew I loved it, I would have been in so much trouble. Not that I wasn't anyways. All right, illustration. We got Edward Gorey. You guys know Gorey? Man, what a depressing dude. Have you ever seen a picture of him? He's like an Addams Family character. And beautiful. Maybe some of the best pen work ever. And I love him, and I still steal from him. My work used to look a lot, I used to copy him a lot when I'm younger. Now I'm working more broad, but I still look at his compositions and designs and ink, and he boggles me. Dr. Seuss. Now guys, he's a mean one, Mr. Grinch. I love Dr. Seuss. Have you ever seen his art that he didn't show while he was alive and has been released? It's really beautiful. But there is nothing better than an old copy of The Grinch. That's what my granddad called him, The Grinch. And the ones that are just red, white, and black. The one, if they've added extra color, don't throw it away. It's garbage, trash. And look at that! It's a made up dude who steals Christmas, drawn by a Jewish man. that became the basis of an empire of Christmas stuff. And it's because everybody is just trying to catch up and capture the magic of those illustrations. And that's what everything the man did was. And if you haven't seen his sketches, look at his sketches. They're astounding. And then, one last dude in this category, Richard Scarry. My grandmother, for some reason, had a book, and it was, oh hell, who cares? It was like the Animals Merry Christmas. And I was obsessed with it. I would go up there and like take sketches the whole time we were up there, but I had to leave it because she had other grandchildren. Disappointing. And I like all of Scary's stuff, like the bunny book and stuff like that, the early stuff in particular, because he was painting it directly himself. Later stuff he would draw it on tracing paper, transfer it, and then color it in like a coloring book. And that stuff's just not as magical, I think. But I love Richard Scarry, man. And I don't know if you know this, he drew animals wearing clothes a lot. Man, isn't that a cool idea for art? All right, let's move on to something completely different. The Northern European Renaissance. That's what we get. Guys, I love the Northern European Renaissance. I'm going to tell you how I found it really fast. When I was a little boy, I liked these things called dinosaurs. I swear to God, this is all true. And we had the World Book encyclopedias, and I would get out the D, and I'd open it up to dinosaurs, and I would draw on my notebook paper dinosaurs. And one day I was flipping through it by accident, I went too far, and I found a guy named Albrecht Dürer. And I was like, holy hell, how did he do this with a ballpoint pen? Because I was like 7. And so I began the decades-long quest to draw prints as if they were illustrated. And then luckily I got to college, and this cool guy named Goolsby was like, you dum-dum. He never called me a dum-dum, guys. But no, he taught me printmaking. And I've always loved where printmaking meets illustration and meets painting. And if you look at my work, it looks a lot like somebody who is trying to get a misregistered print as a painting. I love misregistered prints. By the way, it did not, oh my God, I would make like 20 basic prints in printmaking class, and I would end up with 6 good ones, but the ones I kind of secretly love were the ones that were all messed up because I didn't get it straight. Sorry, Professor Goolsby. So I love Hans Holbein, Ben Bean, it doesn't matter. These are his sketches. Nobody looks at his sketches. But man, I love his Henry VIII's too. Henry VIII, man, he looks cool and terrifying. I love Dürer. This is the piece I have drawn the most reinterpretations of and painted the most times in my life. Night, Death, and the Devil. I have repainted or redrawn that no less than probably 50 times. I keep coming back to it because it captures so much. And it's something, I got to see it at the Met when my brother sang at Carnegie Hall because he's way cooler than me. But I went to a museum. And I got to, basically the same. Oh, he's so much cooler than me, guys. And I got to go to the Met, and they had like all these different Dürer pieces. And my dad looked at me, and he said, "We're just going to leave you here for about an hour or 2, aren't we?" And I'm like, "Yeah, go. There's other stuff I got." And I spent like an hour and a half with just the Dürers. And I probably spent 30 minutes on that. And it's perfect. I don't know how he did it. I don't know. And then we have Schongauer. And this is my favorite piece by him, The Temptation of St. Anthony. And it's the demons just beating the living sin out of poor St. Anthony. And it's glorious. And I love these too because they show what the Renaissance artists in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance still wanted to paint ugly things. But they had to paint like pretty rich people or ugly rich people and make them look pretty, or fruits or whatever. They had to make a living. But I think they really wanted to do weird stuff and ugly stuff. And I feel like an automatic simpatico with people who've been dead for 5 centuries. And I love them. Then we have Peter Bruegel. It's the elder. I like all the Bruegels. Bruegel 1, Bruegel 2, Bruegel 3. But I love, again, ugly peasant dudes who are just doing fun stuff. Stuff that my friends and I would do. I love it. We got, oh, here's another Holbein. Man, is this the most disturbing, beautiful thing in the world? The body of dead Christ in the tomb is painful and amazing. And it makes you feel so much. It actually inspired me to do paintings of the 12 disciples on the day that Christ died. And I still have them. I could never bear to give them away or sell them. I still have all 12 of them. And holy God, that's amazing. I'm sorry, you can't talk. And then there's this guy. God did not let me have children for a reason. And it is because I would name a boy Hieronymus. I'd call him Hero. He'd be cool, man. Be like, Hero, mow the lawn, you little jerk. Shut up, Dad. Don't call me that. My name's Jake. No, it isn't. My dad, Blair. We know so little about this man, and his work is like this is a close-up of a piece that's a triptych that is gigantic, and nobody does this. Nobody today, nobody ever. And I want to do that. Look, there's a little rabbit murdering somebody, and there's a naked lady with a dice on her head. Who knows why? Expressionism. I am going to commit one of the great sins of art history and lump the proto-expressionists, the expressionists, the neo-expressionists, some of the impressionists who were kind of expressionistic together, all of them. I like them. I read what they write. The Vienna Secession, I've read several books on them just because I want to know what they were thinking. If it was degenerate art, according to Nazis, then I like it. Man, I hate Nazis. I know, controversial statement. But guys, I hate Nazis. The last people you're allowed to make bad guys in every video game. I'm such a dork. Okay. So I wanted to talk about a couple of these. I also love the fact that these guys were like on the Western side of trying to assimilate what we were learning from African art and Asian art and Native American art in the broader scope of North and South and Mesoamerica and the Caribbean. Like, these were the Westerners who were looking at other people's art, other civilizations' art, and saying there's something to be learned here. And that's bloody amazing. And it's beautiful. And this is Egon Schiele, the greatest artist of the 20th century. And he died way too young. And this is a portrait of his wife as she died. And he would die just not long after for the same illness. Now, he drew a lot of stuff I cannot show you because it is pretty sexy. But damn, he could paint. And the colors he could create, I still don't know how he did it. And his lines, my books of Egon Schiele are filled with notes. Because I'm like, all right, how did he make this line? And then I'll practice in the book making the line until I'm like, okay, now I know. And I just want to, God, I wish he were alive. I wish I could talk to him. Ansel Kiefer. Charles Goolsby used to give us art history papers in painting classes. And he would assign us artists that he had handpicked. This is why he's a great professor. He knew the people we needed to learn from. Either people that I was a little arrogant jerk. I edited that, you're welcome. And I would be like, this guy sucks. Jackson Pollock still, I'm like, I'm sorry, boss. People that we needed to see either because we needed to learn from them or we needed to learn to get over ourselves and realize why they were great artists. And he would like hand pick them for us. Who does that, guys? Do you know how much work that is? Charles Goolsby did it. And God, I love you, man. Anyways, this was a dude who told me about him. I'm like, he's German. What do I have to learn from a German dude? I'm 18 and cool. And now every piece he has I've seen 400 times because I'm like, oh God, he's amazing. And Kiefer also is profoundly political, but unless you know the context, you often don't see the politics, which is kind of me. I read, people are like, don't you love all the King's Men? I'm like, what? No, gross. I read about politics every day. But all you think about is politics, yes. Well, what do you read when you want to read about interesting fictional politics? Science fiction, fantasy, South American magical realism. I don't know, whatever it takes, but not explicit politics. Because and Kiefer is like, I'm going to write about being an artist in a world that oppresses artists, or not write about, paint about, and I'm going to paint about societies forgetting the sins that they had, and I'm going to remind my society that they committed those sins. And I'm going to do it in a way that isn't explicit. You're going to have to sit and stare at it and think about it. And I'm going to do it. He does other things. He paints with hay and tar and aluminum and steel. And these paintings are going to fall apart sometime in the next century. They're all going to die. But my God, they were beautiful. They're like fireworks with paint. And I want to do that so much. Then we have Basquiat, who burnt out way too fast. Now, I should have said, I debated whether to have Basquiat and Keith Haring in here, who were the two great men who were painters at the moment. I was like right at that moment in the late 80s when I was kind of starting to first think about art as art. And they're perfect. Like, I think they're the two guys in my lifetime who do lines best. And Basquiat's also like a lunatic in the sense that he just writes. But if he stored up thoughts, and he stored up ideas, and he stored up slogans, and he stored up the pop, and then he infused it in the expression. And it was glorious. And clearly, you can see how much I steal from that man. And here's another Basquiat, just because you can't have just one Basquiat. Okay, throw that one away. All right, the Surrealists. I'm going to have to quote myself a second. But I'm quoting myself to quote someone else, so don't worry. André Breton's 1924 essay, Manifesto on Surrealism, is amazing to read if you haven't read it. I don't think of it enough, but whenever I do, I encounter those who disregard the art of the fantastic, the supernatural, the insane, the surreal, those who feel art should be limited to the portrait, landscape, still life, or historical painting, though they may not express it. And those who feel that all art should be grounded in the realistic or the materialistic. Breton says these people are persons who hate the marvelous, a hatred which rages in certain men, who deem absurdity beneath them, deserving to be buried. This is an outrage to humanity in Breton's eyes. The marvelous is real beauty, and it should be lost to rationalism. We're not just rational creatures. We're not just waking creatures, we're dreaming creatures. If we're not embracing that, we're missing fundamentally something about being human. It reminds me too, I didn't write this down, but I thought it reminds me of the philosophy of Edmund Burke and his concept of the sublime. But that's for the political science nerds. Philosophy, whatever, who cares? Breton also insists that we engage in this psychic automatism. Like this automatic expression of forms. And that really strikes me in the way that I sketch, the way that I respond to music, the way that I respond to the ideas I'm incorporating in my life. And also, in particular, I guess, in my writing. And I don't want to paint normal stuff, and I don't want to paint pretty stuff. I want to paint foxes wearing suits. I wrote this down, so I'm going to read it. It's very clever. It's not, it's dumb. Horses are charismatic creatures, catfish are Sufi mystics, and all varieties of unnatural being haunt our ordinary life. I love the Surrealists. I love everything about them, even when they bug me. And it should be said, my high school art teacher, Karen Harvey, is who really introduced me to this, And this was the painting, and I painted like 7 versions of this in high school. Marguerite is cool, and not just because he inspires really good movies. Tongue crown there. Okay. Japanese and Mexican painting and printmaking. There is no sane reason to lump these together, but by God, I did it. I'm not sure why I think of them at the same time, and I'm not sure why I'm so drawn to these traditions, but I think it is because these are traditions of art that eschew clear dichotomies. Especially dichotomies that so clearly define most Western art, at least until the late 19th century. They don't really care about the distinction between fine art and pop art or popular art or craft art. Like, this is the ukiyo-e. This is where we got comic books from. You can poor people would buy them, hang them up on their walls as decorations, and they're some of the great works of art of all time. There's no question that this matters to me. I love their techniques, I love their iconography, I love their themes, I love their expressions. But the other thing I love is that Japanese art, at least since the period before the Tokugawa shogunate up to the present, and Mexican art, ever since the Triple Alliances were conquered by Spain, that we call Aztec, they are cultures dealing with a different synthesis. The non-Western and the Western colliding and trying to deal with the necessity of creating a culture that bridges intentionally and joyously those things. This is Posada, probably my single favorite printmaker that's not named Durr. And he printed skeletons. And I don't know if you've noticed from my show, I kind of like those. And just on note on that, one reason I like skeletons is because the skeleton for me is the human. You can't tell what country they're from, you can't tell their race, you can't tell their religion, you can't tell if they were rich or they were poor, but you can tell they were us. And then you can dress them up. And however you dress up, it becomes whatever you want. It represents one little part of us for that purpose, and then it represents something else when you dress it up a different way. And I really like that. Also, they're creepy. And then here's Frida Kahlo, 2 Fridas, in a private collection, enrages me, should be in a museum, Indiana Jones. That was a better joke than you all gave it credit for. I'm enraged. The reason I love this is it really gets the point across, right? This is Frida at war with herself, the child of a Victorian German and a Mexican woman. The person her parents wanted her to be and the person her husband wants her to be. And then literally, if you look at the painting in close up, you can see those colors and it's like, holy mackerel, she's presented herself as white and Latina. That's Mexican art. It's worlds, not a world, worlds. And that's, I'm a West Virginia hillbilly who studies East Asian philosophy. And that's me, that's what I'm struggling with. I want to be Western, and I want to be American, and I want to be Southern, and I want to be a damn hillbilly. But I also want to be Confucian and Taoist. And I'd also like to be cosmopolitan. And maybe want to sneak in just human being. Then there's written and calligraphic art. No surprise there. I write all over my stuff like a child on a desk. By the way, I love going into schools and seeing graffiti on desks. I still love it. I love it so much. I didn't do it because I was afraid I'd get in trouble and I was a nerd, but I liked it. I've kind of already talked about this, but I want to talk about it in the sense of just to show you some of the people that really matter to me. Zhang Shu and Huai Su are 2 of the great drunken masters because they would get hammered and they would do calligraphy. And I'm not going to lie, I can't read a lick of this, and I had 3 years of Chinese. And I don't care at all. Because I look at it and it's perfect. You know where all these chops come from? This is different people who owned it who want to be associated with it. So they want to prove they were a big deal because they have this great artist's work that they own. And that's great, but I'd love to see it without that. But then again, I kind of like the chops too. It's a weird dichotomy. And then there's Islamic calligraphy, which is sometimes related to the ban on pictorial form of living creatures, but not always. But I just wanted to show some of the ones I love. I love Osman's work. This is from the 17th century. And it's freaking amazing, dude. God, as I, again, turn into a 90s boy. This is, we don't even know who did this. This is Persian. And I can't imagine someone being able to read that. But I can imagine an artist infusing his meaning, his interpretation of a text into a form that a human being can pick up and get the emotional response to the authentic lines, each of which is perfect, even if he misspelled it. He didn't stop. If he made a mistake, he didn't stop. He was like, this is the piece. This is what I've got. And he just kept going. And that's gorgeous. And then there's this guy. I had a conversation about him a little bit earlier. Howard Finster. I didn't know about Finster until about 15 years ago. But man, I'm glad I do. What a productive fellow. And you can't describe Finster's work. It's Southern, it's folk, it's Christian, and it's just him doing whatever the hell he wants because he's driven and he's passionate. He has to do it. And it's bloody glorious. I've never seen a piece that I can go, God, how did he do that? And he probably did it in half an hour, and it's better than anything I'll ever do. Here's another one. That's a big cat. The Black Cat of Desert Storm. Since he was numbering all of them, we know this was 18,086. This 18,086 painting. Who the hell does that, guy? I gotta marry rich or something. I don't know. Good luck, Eric. All right. I'd also like to say that something that helped me link up to this is when I came to love, I grew up loving Motown, and around 1999 I started listening to jazz and blues. And the idea of improvisation and scatting and finding the tension between skills and techniques that have been carefully developed, and then living in a moment and responding to the your peers in the room, like, I think helped teach me how to do this as well. But maybe I might be crazy. I mean, I am, but. And then I read the wonderful review my friend Martin did of me, and then I sent it to all my family so that they would be impressed. And everybody cried, including me, because I'm a pushover. And I was like, oh, I didn't talk about religious iconography at all. And I have a gigantic hellmouth in my thing. So I wanted to say, I grew up United Methodist. My sister-in-law is a Methodist minister. My brother's a Methodist music director. I went to a Methodist college. I'm Methodotastic. And I love Wesleyan theology. I still do. I really do love Wesleyan theology. That's fascinating to me. And I love the fact that it's really ecumenical, that John Wesley was like, I want to study with Sufi Muslims. I'm almost done, I'm sorry. Why are you so angry at me, Anna? Why are you cussing me out? I'm sorry. Anna would never do that. She's an angel. Okay. Yeah, I'm almost done, I promise. I have this and another slide. Are you okay? Are you angry? She's so red. I do this to my students. I'm on one. But basically, I have a couple more slides, but I'll go through fast. This is a hellmouth. The big painting in there, just to give you a real quick version of it, is a hellmouth. And it's the end of the world. The apocalypse is over. We've sorted all the mess. We've cleaned up all the blood and the locusts. And it's the four horsemen of the apocalypse jamming down with some demons in a hellmouth. And, why not, right? And this is the piece that Martin referenced in his review. And I love it. And it's one of the ones I looked at. But I looked at about 50 different hellmouths. Because, man, again, medieval artists loved painting ugly things. And they did it whenever they could. And I love icons, Eastern Orthodox icons in particular. I love Mexican religious art, whether it's folk art or high art. I love it all. And I love Ethiopian art. And if you haven't really studied Ethiopian art, it's worth it. It'll blow your mind. It's really beautiful. And again, I like the flatness. I like I like it. It's cool. I like that I like that it's not Western. I like that it's its own beautiful culture. Anyways, that's it, guys. So I want to thank you for your attention. I hope I wasn't boring. Well, here's another one. There's some more Howard Finster. I hope I wasn't too boring. And thank you for coming. And thank Anna, and thank Emory Henry, and the AAME, and William King, and UVA Wise, and all of you. Thank you all.